that work so you can make it count. It'll create itself. Gotta get on the ground. Gotta put in that work so you can make it count. It don't create itself, I'm sure you know. Many had debts and your body just blow. If you don't put it work, you never know. If you don't take a step, you never grow. You just keep dreaming about it and go, but you never put a foot on the road. Gotta be ready, you gotta be bold. Pick up a shovel and dig up a hole. You got a power, you gonna divide.
Zen Ray here. Welcome, Knick Nation, my band of brothers. I appreciate you guys coming on. We'll be back. We're going to put that on in a few. And we have a recent report. So stand by.
I don't know that him going to the New York Knicks, Stephen, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that him going to the New York Knicks is going to be that much of a difference maker for the Knicks. Because what made Donovan and the Utah Jazz so good is that pairing with Rudy Gobert. Now, obviously, that pairing, I think, has been maximized, and that's probably second round of the playoffs. That's probably what we're looking at going forward. Mm-hmm. And I just want to give you just a little bit of pause, because I know you may be excited about Donovan Mitchell going to the Knicks. I don't know if he's going to all of a sudden elevate the Knicks into contention.
Listen, man, I have fun on First Take, but when we get into serious issues, I know how to be serious. And the reality of the situation is that the New York Knicks are not an organization that's worthy of Donovan Mitchell. Let's just call it what it is. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm a diehard New York Knicks fan. I root for them. They make me sick to my stomach because I'm emotionally connected to this franchise who repeatedly frustrates me and ticks me off year after year after year, with the exception of a couple of years ago when I would stupidly talk about we here, yeah, finally, and I embarrassed myself with it because I believed enough in the organization. The New York Knicks are a national embarrassment because of James Dolan, and Leon Rose hasn't helped matters any, because here you are, you're the president of basketball operations, and you're giving a press conference talking to the media in September, and then nobody finds you until April, and even then you're giving an in-house interview owned by the interview with the network that's owned by James Dolan. So the reality of the situation is World Wide West, Scott Perry, Kenny Payne, Tom Thibodeau, and all of these guys, unfortunately, are stained by the level of ineptitude coming from the top. That's like a damn virus coming down upon everybody, even though that's not the appropriate thing to bring up right now. So I apologize for that in the age of COVID. In the end, what it comes down to is this. They tick me off. They don't deserve Donovan Mitchell. I hope they get Donovan Mitchell. I would be ecstatic about that, JJ, but I am under no illusions. I know that it's a slim to zero chance that they get Donovan Mitchell. I would be ecstatic if they did get him, even if it meant giving up Julius Randle to get him. I would be happy about that in a heartbeat, because I think Donovan Mitchell is a star. And by the way, while I'm pointing the fingers at people, y'all do understand that Phil Jackson should not be allowed beyond the borders of New York after passing up Donovan Mitchell with the 8th pick to draft Frank Ntilikina. I was on New York radio screaming about the fact that Donovan Mitchell played for Louisville. This brother could ball. You got the 8th overall pick. You snatch him. And Phil Jackson, all right, bad hips and all, talking about he saw this guy, Frank Ntilikina, play in France, was worthy of being the number 8 overall pick. Phil Jackson, the coach, is a legend. Phil Jackson, the executive, shouldn't be allowed in the state of New York after the atrocity of his performance that he put forth for years running the damn New York Knicks organization. That's all I got to say, because even thinking about it even more pisses me off. So let's move on.
I want to make one point, Stephen, just a sort of a broad generality about something you said when you were talking about Utah not being able to get a free agent destination. You know, one of the reasons that the New York Knicks and to a degree where the Los Angeles Lakers are right now is because they've placed too much emphasis on free agents. And if you look across the board at the teams that made deep playoff runs this year, almost all of them, their best players are homegrown talent. Now, there's exceptions to that, of course. Chris Paul on the Suns, but Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, all homegrown. You see that with the Boston Celtics. Of course, you see that with Golden State as well. So the organizations that are placing, Memphis Grizzlies, another great example, the organizations that are placing an emphasis on actually drafting well, and you can go down the line year after year after year at how poorly the Knicks have drafted. That really is the issue. It's
That's
not
fine,
a free agency
JJ.
issue.
JJ, but stop bringing the Knicks up in the same breath as the Lakers. Regardless of what you want to say about the Lakers, they've got 6 titles this millennium. The New York Knicks haven't won a title in 50 years. Don't stop comparing the two, will you? Stop it.
I'm comparing where they're at right now in terms
They're
of
horrible.
not having homegrown draft picks. That was the comparison. I'm not comparing anyone.
Well, let me lose with LeBron James.
I want to be very clear on
Let me lose with LeBron James instead of Julius Randle.
You'll
Okay, how about
gladly
that?
lose with LeBron James. All right, we got
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So potentially joining Mr. Brunson on the Knicks. It could be Donovan Mitchell. Who knows, right? Jazz star who has not, by the way, publicly demanded a trade, taking his talents to a gym in New York City. He did that to the backboard. Looks like they need to adjust that a little bit. To reiterate, though, to be very clear, Donovan has not demanded a trade from Utah, but as our Adrian Wojnarowski reported, teams, including the Knicks, are trying to engage the Jazz in talks for the star guard. Of course, I said a fan event yesterday for Jalen Brunson because there were no reporters who were invited or allowed to be in there, which is absolutely ridiculous. Yes. And so Jalen Brunson could not be asked about the potential for who else he likes to see around him or who he would like to see be on this roster for the start of the season because there was no media there to hold those folks accountable. So I guess I'll start with you here, Dave.
But listen, hold on,
wait a second.
Malika, hold on.
Hang on. Hang on.
Isn't that the Knick thing?
That is the Knicks thing. It doesn't make it an acceptable thing.
Yeah. Very unacceptable.
But Dave, I'm going to put that over here for a second. Who has more leverage between those two teams when we're talking about Utah or New York?
I'd say the Jazz do because, first of all, they've already started the rebuild process. And guess what? The ultimate goal for Danny Ainge and company is not to win next year. So you have Donovan Mitchell around pieces that don't necessarily fit and you don't win, you're still going towards Victor Wembanyama. That's what they're breaking this thing down for in order to try to get him as the prize. And guess what? You know who's going to be applying pressure to the Knicks? Knicks fans and the tabloid newspapers. It's going to be a daily drama. We want to get Donovan Mitchell in town, especially if the Knicks don't get off to a great start. And also you think about the Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose era. They had that flash in the pan success when Julius Randle was Sixth Man of the Year. Last year was an abject disaster. They had to start proving that they can get things done once again. The guy who can help them get things done is Donovan Mitchell, trading out those draft picks that Danny Ainge surely coveted.
Trade possibilities out of Utah.
Utah and New York talked last week, and I think the Jazz got a sense of what New York might be willing to do. And it's not just one particular deal. I think there's options, and it's almost like a sliding scale. That the more players you put in a deal, the less draft picks you want to give up. The more draft assets you put in a deal, you want to put less players in. If you're the Jazz, I want the players and I want the picks. Because that's where it starts. And so I think for the Jazz, they go out now around the league and see what else is out there for Donovan Mitchell, get a sense of what the market is, what teams are willing to do. And I do think the Knicks and the Jazz will re-engage here at some point. Maybe it's this week, maybe it's next week, maybe it's in 2 or 3 weeks. But the Jazz are not going to necessarily move quickly. The Rudy Gobert talks, that was over a period of time this summer. And once Minnesota stepped up with the package they did, that was an easy deal for the Jazz to do. New York is motivated. They're motivated to get Donovan Mitchell. But I think they're also motivated to not just give up everything to get him. They've got 4 of their own unprotected first-round picks. Now, people talk about 7 or 8 picks. A lot of those picks, they are
top 14.
They're protected.
Yeah,
they're all conditional protected picks.
Yeah, conditional protected picks that are coming from places like Detroit, Washington. I don't think the Jazz value those the way they certainly don't value those the way they do New York's unprotected picks. Those have value. Tim put together a pretty good list historically of what an unprotected first-round pick from the Knicks can get you.
Jamal Murray, LaMarcus Aldridge, Joakim Noah, Gordon Hayward, all drafted with unprotected Knicks picks from trades.
Yeah, there is no more damning suggestion you can make about a franchise than I'm dying to get their draft picks. That's what you really want. You want the Knicks draft picks.
What are you pointing at me for, by the way? Why are you pointing at me?
For those who don't know, Alan covers the Knicks locally here, so you're very plugged into that situation. How significant would you describe it for the franchise to get Donovan Mitchell?
Well, a GM once told me, my job is to find better players than you. Like that every day. That's what you're trying to do, no matter what your roster looks like. He's the better player than they have right now. So that's if you can do that, it's talent acquisition. They have to find a talented player. They've spent a lot of time getting front court players. Carmelo Anthony was a great player. He was an all-star and all that stuff. They haven't had an all-star guard since Allen Houston in 2001. That's how long you have to go back. And they really haven't had a high-scoring, great, dynamic guard like that. You can go all the way back to maybe even Clyde Frazier. Like, it's been that long. So they need to find players like that to get better. That's the significance. You know, the idea that it makes them a championship contender, can we just get back in the league? Like, let's do that first. They made the playoffs 5 times in 20 years, 4 times in the last 10. Just become a competitive team, and then you can just build from there.
Quick final word, Woj. Go.
Well, just look at the ground the Knicks have to make up in their own division. Philadelphia, Boston, Toronto. Like, they've got a ways to go just to get competitive.
It just kind of seems inevitable. It seems like it's a done deal that Donovan Mitchell will eventually be traded to the Knicks. However, seems like talks have slowed down and they will, quote, re-engage here at some point. Jalen, is it Donovan Mitchell or bust for the Knicks?
I believe it's going to happen at some point, and yes is the answer. And you already see him taking his introductory victory laps. He's throwing out the first pitch everywhere in metropolitan New York City. He's getting ready for it to happen also. And let me just tell you this. He's someone that grew up in Connecticut. He deserves this opportunity. I believe he's going to shine really bright on the big stage at MSG if given the opportunity. I like them adding Jalen Brunson. They're going to be short and diminutive, and they're going to have their challenges defensively. But I'm going to tell you what, Tibbs likes to put the ball in his guard's hands. And so if they're able to keep a core of their team, like, I'm not giving up R.J. Barrett, and they should be able to keep Randall. So if that's the case, like, you're going to be excited about the New York Knickerbockers again. I'm not saying that they're going to win the championship, but I'm saying that they're now going to be a team that can legitimately flirt with a playoff spot. And so that's progress based on what you saw last year, and that's growth from within. You still have Quickly, you still have Mitchell Robinson. Like, there are some things that they've built, like, internally, that I believe they can continue to add to. But I think Donovan Mitchell is that guy, and he's been one of the elite playoff performers and high scorers when he's gotten going in the second season. So I believe it should be a motivated Knicks in order to try to get this deal done.
Donovan Mitchell grew up in Westchester, very close to Connecticut. But Mr. Rose, they might flirt with a playoff spot, but they're not going home with a playoff spot. They're not getting a playoff spot's phone number or Instagram handle. Like, they might just flirt for a little bit, maybe buy a playoff spot a beer, but that's going to be the end of that relationship with the playoff spot for the New York Knicks. They definitely not getting to the second round, regardless, even if they win a play-in game or whatever, with Donovan Mitchell or without. Another drama that we've been following all summer is everything around.
I'm not going to pretend to speak for Donovan here, because I don't know his feelings towards the organization. I don't know his feelings towards Salt Lake City. I don't know if he has a desire to be in a bigger market. So I want to speak more about, first of all, the job that Quinn Snyder did. That organization, after Jerry Sloan and after the Darren Williams trade, they were stuck in the mud there for a number of years. And Quinn Snyder, Dennis Lindsey, through draft picks, and that front office got this organization into a really good place. And Quinn should be applauded for the job that he did. And I get what he's saying here about the team needing a different voice, because my observation throughout this season is that this team felt stale. And sometimes when you go through playoff failure, it can motivate you, and it can sort of accelerate and bring the team together. And other times it feels like it pulls you apart. And I lived that a little bit with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I can speak to that. I felt this year this team felt stale. And so I think the question is not, should Donovan Mitchell want out? The question should be, what are the goals of the Utah Jazz going forward?
Never give up. Never give up.
knowing that the best is yet to come with love, peace, and gratitude.